Well, the start of the first session at Hockenheim 2002 is just moments away. We have a small problem with our commentary position, which means that John has rejoined me in the studio here to talk over the pictures that we're receiving live from the circuit. And there he is, five-time world champion Michael Schumacher.
Yeah, Michael, never really enjoying great success. Won here once, never had a pole position. And now that the World Championship's out of his way, it's always been, this Grand Prix comes either the end of July, beginning of August, always been a pressure point. Just creeping, go on, there we go. So the session is open, pit lane open, that's 1 hour. And of course for everybody, this is a brand new circuit. And for Toyota, it's probably the easiest job in the year because they're starting for the first time really from a level playing field. And whatever they do today is going to be measured directly against the rest of the field. So this revised Hockenheim Ring Baden-Württemberg is quite a challenge for the teams. And as they come out of the pit lane, the short sprint down, and then it's going to be hard on the brakes, turn right, and then we go on to the new extension, this revised circuit, then quick left, it's flat out through here, and then it'll be flat out all the way along this long left-hand curve as you ride with Ralf Schumacher. And then you come down to a hairpin bend, which is not unlike the Adelaide hairpin bend, a corner that will offer up chances because it's quite wide. But just before the session started, we had a glimpse from a helicopter shot. There you can see in this hairpin bend already a little bit of rain beginning to fall. We saw that from the helicopter. And this session, 70%, 71% humidity. We did get a 40% chance of rain, but I think that's probably going to rise as now we go into one of these further extensions. There's the rain. It's beginning to fall more across the circuit. And not what everybody had hoped for. They would like to get a nice, clear, dry session. First of all, to get a feel for the circuit. Secondly, to overlap the reality to the computer simulations of a lap of the circuit. Now we're back into the original part of the Hockenheim Ring. This is the stadium. Big change for the teams and for the drivers because, first of all, the surface has been resurfaced. Secondly, the cars are running a much higher level of downforce. Not accustomed to running that level of downforce in this part of the circuit. So it's going to be almost a new, even though they've been familiar with this part of the racetrack, completely different. And the corner I think is going to be the most fascinating corner is the one at the end of the pit straight. They're going to be approaching it at about 185 miles an hour, down maybe 2 gears. Previously it was a 4th gear corner, now I think it's going to be 5th because of that increase in downforce. And I think we're going to see a lot of exciting pictures coming from turn 1 as the cars go out of the stadium. A lot higher speeds than previously seen. And if anybody does go off, well, we know from previous experiences just what it is like when a car goes off there. Now they're going to be probably travelling maybe 5 to 10 miles an hour quicker at a given part of the track, and they'll also be braking marginally later as well because of that increase in downforce.
But this is, or that was the first time many of these drivers had ever driven this track, perhaps all of them in a Formula One car.
I think Ralf Schumacher had been around in a road BMW, and a couple of drivers might have had a look at it, but nobody's been able to test on it. And this is the first time that we're seeing Grand Prix cars will run on this revised 2.71 mile Hockenheim circuit.
Which would seem to indicate why just about everybody's been out.
Well, they're going to go out immediately because they can't afford not to get any bit of information. Even though the weather's not ideal, there are spots and spits of rain all around the racetrack. I mean, Ferrari do sometimes, as we saw, for example, at Manicure a week ago, they sat out the first 20 minutes, knowing that the track is such a changeable feast. So they want to go straight out, find out where the track goes, get a feel for the rhythm of the circuit. They do computer simulations of a circuit. All the teams will be given the layout via computer links, and they can pretty accurately simulate where and what the car will do. They've got to do it, of course, for their onboard and how the gear change are operated. The driver has got manual control, but he's got a button as well, so the car will automatically know where it is on the racetrack. Nevertheless, Michael just having a little look around, and quite a different feel here, watching where he is in the circuit. This is a tight left-hand corner which will lead back on through that right-hand corner onto the original last straight 4 of the original circuit, and then it's into the Opal curve, I think they call it, maybe it's changed its name now, and then down into the Sachs curve, which is where Michael's coming in. You can see either the onboard shot or the camera view from it. But again, all this part of the racetrack is changing in terms of how a driver will remember it. Last year, he'll have had the lowest aerodynamic downforce setup of any of the circuits this was the circuit where you had the highest top speed of any in the calendar. Now that honour is going to go to Monza and strangely to Indianapolis as well, which has got an extremely long straight, but of course cars run fairly high downforce levels there to compensate for the very twiddly parts of the Indianapolis circuit.
Something of an historic moment here, the first flying lap on the revised Hockenheim circuit, and who better than Michael Schumacher to do it.
We'll just watch Michael as he hugs the curb all the way around that long. Now I think we're going to see a lot of cars picking up a bit of a slipstream, a bit of a draft. It's going to be difficult to defend going into this corner because it's so wide. Now, if you go and cut across and make a very narrow entry into the corner, you will allow somebody to go down the outside and then make the switch back as you come out of the exit of the corner. So the design of this circuit, in conjunction with Helmut Tilke, who's been responsible for the changes to the Nürburgring, is going to offer up lots of chances. And this is looking down now on board with the BAR. I think that's Jacques Villeneuve, as we still ride with Michael Schumacher on board on the onboard channel. Back to Michael. So coming out of that Sachs curve, you can see really how much narrower the racetrack here in the stadium appears compared to the new extension, the revision to the Grand Prix circuit. Michael dives back into the pit lane. He's done the requisite lap. He's got a feel for the circuit. There's not an awful lot the drivers can do except just wait, go back out again, and then do a series of 5 laps, do 3 flying laps, and in and out lap.
Well, we understand the small problem in the commentary area is now fixed, John. They found your favourite cushion, so if you'd like to go and rejoin Ben Edwards, we can have a chat with Bruce Jones, who's caught up with Tim Edwards of the Jordan team.
Tim Edwards, it's good to see Giancarlo Fisichella putting his helmet on. I take it that means that Sid Watkins passed him fit to compete here at Hockenheim.
That's correct. He had a 40-minute assessment with Sid yesterday and the local circuit doctor, and after that he got written permission that he could drive today.
Now, what's he had to do? It was a very big, I hear, a 32G impact at Magny-Cours. Has he just been told to rest, or has he been able to do some physio to aid his recovery?
Predominantly he's just been resting, and he's done some light training, but mainly it's just been resting and just getting over the accident. But he obviously he took it quite well. He went to the Jamiroquai concert on Wednesday night, so he can't be too bad.
Oh, it was a big blow to the head. Tim, thanks very much.
On this revised Hockenheim track. Sorry, we're a little bit late getting to you from our commentary position, but all sorted now. And Rubens Barrichello on circuit. Michael Schumacher, the only man to have completed a flying lap of this revised track, down from 4.2 miles to 2.8 miles in length. And of course, the benefit for the fans in this stadium area, they'll have more laps to enjoy. With the older Hockenheim circuit being so long, race length was only some 45 laps, so they only flashed past you that many times in the race. Now they'll flash past you 67 times.
Yes, I think there's a big change to the circuit, to the whole philosophy of what's going on at racetracks around the world, and the traditional tracks, and Hockenheim was really one of those. It's a 70th anniversary, I believe, this year. 1932 was the first time it was used. It was more a dirt track in those days rather than an asphalt racetrack. Nevertheless, it was a part of history from 1977, other than 1985 when the German Grand Prix was held back at the revised Nürburgring. So a circuit of quite a lot of heritage, history and change. Of course, those big long straights will be missed because technically it was a challenge for the team and the engineers, and also I think drivers enjoyed the chance to run at those very high speeds, up to 222 miles an hour last year. And that was the time or speed recorded by Ricardo Zonta, who was actually, and ironically, standing in and replacing Heinz-Harald Frentzen, who had been binned by Jordan after the British Grand Prix prior to coming to Germany.
Yeah, well, there's always a story or two around at this time of year. We're watching Barrichello, and of course now Ferrari saying their efforts going into the Brazilian as he chases second place in the Drivers' Championship. Failed to score last time out after failing to even start the race in Magny-Cours. A great shame for him, and that has put him back down to third in the championship, just 2 points behind Juan Pablo Montoya. But the spare car is now available for Barrichello to use. Not today, of course, because we're into the free practice and they're not allowed to switch cars during the first day. But when it comes to qualifying and when it comes to the race itself, he will have first call on the spare car, and that could make a big difference.
Well, I think it's reassuring because Rubens had a really tough break. 2 Grand Prix, of course, British Grand Prix. Nevertheless, he got onto the podium for that one. But more so, I think in France, and we saw his body language and he expressed himself with a very Brazilian, I'm not very happy symbol, and he walked away, went to the airport, And it was only really when he realised that Michael was going to be crowned world champion that he decided that in the interest of harmony and politics, better to come back and join in those celebrations, as painful as I'm sure it was for Rubens, because really, I mean, he lost the chance to consolidate his second place in the championship. He's now down to third place, and there's a real battle going on between Juan Pablo Montoya, Ralf Schumacher, David Coulthard and Rubens Barrichello. So it's going to be a race and a finale to the season for Barrichello. Hopefully he will consolidate that second place, but principally make sure that Ferrari win the Manufacturers' Championship by the largest margin possible. That
since then, Williams have not announced a replacement for Jeffrey Willis. But a couple of weeks ago, they did sign a Ferrari aerodynamicist who started work for Williams weeks ago. And I'm pleased to say she's a lady. She's called Antonia Terzi. She was at Manicure. I'm not sure if she's here this weekend, but she's spoken, she's held in very high esteem by everybody who's worked with her. So interesting to see what Williams come up with aerodynamically in the back half of this year and indeed for next year's car.
Great, well, thank you very much, Peter. Good to have the information. The engineering changes and personnel changes, of course, as important, if not more so in many ways, as the drivers' market that we're concentrating so much on.
Yes, Ben, just following on what Peter said about the Ferrari aerodynamicist, when she got to Williams, she had a quick look at the figures, and interestingly, the total downforce between the Ferrari and the Williams is just about identical. So it's not necessarily just total figures, it's how it all actually comes through. Another interesting fact that I learned during the midweek, and that, you know, we saw Montoya sit out pretty much all of Sunday morning in Silverstone. We've seen that happen in other Grand Prix. Well, I think Williams are beginning to feel that that's hurting them. The reason it's done is to limit mileage, that BMW insists that they want to keep the mileage down as much as possible. And on that final Sunday morning session, it may not appear to be an important session in terms of anything other than, well, the cars are being run to make sure reliability is there. But the reality is it does give teams an insight into where they will look. And the feeling is that they're not getting enough time on that Sunday morning, in particular in the case of Montoya, and they're going to push BMW to just be a little bit more relaxed, or maybe adjust the engine cycling within BMW.
Well, looking down inside the Jaguar pit, and test driver Andre Lotterer keeping a close eye on Eddie Irvine's progress. Irvine, former winner here at Hockenheim back in 1999 when Ferrari team orders came into play. That was the year that Michael Schumacher had his leg-breaking accident. Irvine was challenging for the championship. Salo was actually leading the Grand Prix here and moved out of the way to let Irvine take the win. So Ferrari team orders, nothing new here at Hockenheim. This weekend, of course, they're saying that they're concentrating on Rubens and that battle for second. But, as you mentioned earlier on, Michael hasn't had a great record here at Hockenheim. It's now, apart from Indianapolis, which of course has only held the Grand Prix a couple of times, it's the only track that he's only won one Grand Prix on now, because of course Silverstone he's doubled up on victories there. So Michael's record at Hockenheim, I'm sure he would like to improve this weekend. Yeah, looking at Takuma Sato, that wasn't liquid coming out, that was the plank in the bottom of the car. Clearly where that part of track, that's the new part of track coming off the old straights, there certainly must be some bumps, or maybe some of the teams running exceptionally low. Combination of both is probably the truth. Man, that maybe, really, I said Kimi Raikkonen did a stunning job in that Grand Prix, got caught on the oil. That's part of the process of learning.
But just another thing, anybody wants to go onto page Sky on 5 on the data channel, you get a really good lesson in how the system works, because all the colours are coming up very frequently. Purple, of course, being the fastest at one given time, green being the personal best, and yellow being the last time recorded.
Yes, and indeed, look at this, Kimi Räikkönen up on the split time, so this is going to be an improvement as the track begins to clean up, although you can see from that camera position still moisture on the camera lens. This is down into the hairpin where they're hoping there really will be some overtaking. Well, maybe you shouldn't mention overtaking and hairpins to Kimi Räikkönen, because that's where it all went wrong for him last time at Magny-Cours, but it was an outstanding drive from the 22-year-old Finn, and surely we're going to see an awful lot more of this over the coming seasons.
And both drivers, Coulthard and Räikkönen, thoroughly delighted with the work that McLaren had done. I think really the first time this year they've had a car where they could really feel it was working with them. Sometimes you get a racing car, you feel, is it a partner or is it a foe? But the McLaren looked good. I think we noted on our broadcast on Friday that the McLaren looked the best car on track on Friday, and that pretty much looked pretty good all the way through the weekend. And when you get that confidence, it does so much to lift a driver, and then the performances come.
So this lap, a 1:19.6, Räikkönen goes fastest overall in these early stages, and we're looking, as we say, that the simulations, and noticed one or two predictions saying it would be around the 1:16 bracket for pole. Well, they're doing 1:19s already, so it could be even quicker than that. So a reasonably high grip surface by the looks of things. The whole thing has been resurfaced, not just this new section.
Indeed, and often when you get a new surface, there's a lot of grip comes up from it. We've seen that in other circuits around the world. Whoa! Felipe Massa. Well, that is, I mean, we see lots of exciting moments from Massa. That was an exciting moment to get off track in the corner. That's coming into, that's through, they call it now the Ajip curb, in fact. And he did very well to keep the car from sparing, again, oversteer as he comes on to pit straight on the front end of the Sauber, clearly generating lots of grip. Now watch as he goes out of the stadium. This is the Nord curve, that has in the past been the scene of many cars going off track. And Kimi Räikkönen, likewise, as he comes into the stadium, runs right wide. I wonder, is there just some moisture falling at that part of track? And that's two cars we've seen getting too far off to the left. So Räikkönen and Massa pushing all the way.
So let's just see what this lap is for Kimi Räikkönen across the line. This is going to be another improvement, an 18.9. So Kimi Räikkönen, star of Magny-Cours, is setting the pace here in the early stages of free practice at Hockenheim. Now, as he continues on around, of course, one of the big stories this last week has been Jenson Button's move from Renault to BAR Honda for next season, and the man who's replacing him at Renault is the Spaniard Fernando Alonso. Bruce Jones caught up with him a moment ago.
Fernando Alonso, it must be much better coming to races knowing that next year you'll be out there driving again for Renault.
Yeah, I think it's much better like this. It's a different feeling when you know that you come back in the races next year, and I try to do my best.
Now, on Wednesday night, you were out playing football against the press, I believe, and you scored a couple of goals. Next year, will they say, no football, Fernando, we can't have you being broken?
Yeah, maybe, I don't know. Yet, but maybe they don't give me to play football anymore. But you know, the important thing for next year is that I have the opportunity to race in a big thing, and we'll see what happens.
Big step forward. Good luck. Thank you, Fernando.
Well, Bruce mentioning the football match, very even it was. It was 8-all after normal time and 5-all after penalties, so nobody getting the advantage. But Alonso, it'll be pleased to see coming out to race next season. And with all the changes, now we have confirmation that Jenson Button, here he is, will be racing for BAR Honda next season. For the moment, he's got to concentrate on the programme for Renault. He's outscored Jarno Trulli so far in this year's championship, but he has been out-qualified by his teammate on several occasions, so he'll want to redress that balance in the remaining races this year.
Yeah, Jenson really must feel more happy with a contract, a 4-year contract in his back pocket, and can look forward to getting into a long association with BAR and Honda, and really an excellent opportunity for Jenson to move forward, which undoubtedly, with now in his 3rd year, he must show further signs as Ralf Schumacher gets it wrong. And we're looking to see, well, that's, in fact, that's just turning into the revised part of the circuit off the old straight. And as we go on board, Rubens Barrichello goes fastest now, 1:18.947.
Yeah, but only a fraction faster than Raikkonen in the McLaren, and the track is cleaning up all the time, so that's quite promising. There is Ralf Schumacher, winner here last year, remember, and a very important victory it was to him. Montoya had the advantage in the early stages. Let's just see where Ralf went wrong.
Yeah, this is just come out of the Nord curve, comes down that short straight, turns right, and there she goes, and I think Ralf takes the honour of being the first person I think we've seen who's actually spun off track.
Yes, Massa tried it, but I don't think he quite managed
Massa had a good go, but then just, well, again, the familiar sight, just the back end on turn-in isn't providing the level of grip, and around she goes. Ralf got the car, of course, kept the engine running, and continues around, and, well, he's just still on his lap. As you see David Coulthard coming up, he's about to start. This will be his first flying, well, in fact, will he do a flying lap? Coulthard, yes, he's starting his first flying lap now. He did his out lap. David Coulthard sat out basically the first 10 minutes, 15 minutes of this session, and that now goes on and starts a process of doing flying laps, as Barrichello also continues and has passed his sector time, backs off in the second sector, but Coulthard, well, 4/10ths down on his first flying lap, which is not a bad effort.
No, it's a good effort. And John, we're expecting a McLaren Mercedes press conference coming up after this session. They're due to announce their driver lineup, so hopefully we will learn just how long David presumably has re-signed for. We're expecting Mika Hakkinen to be making an announcement as well. That will all be coming up at the end of this session.
Yes, the Hakkinen situation, it'll be a confirmation that Mika is retired, and I think we could have told you that, and I think I probably made my best efforts to do so. That in reality, once Mika stepped out of his car last year in Japan, the prospect of seeing him back in a Grand Prix car was a very distant one indeed. And with Kimi Raikkonen now coming along extremely well, I never saw the opportunity for two Finns in a McLaren, and David Coulthard again doing a great job for the team with that superb win in Monte Carlo. You know, David's consolidated his position, but whether it's for a year or longer, well, we'll need to wait until about 10 past or quarter past 11 UK time to find out the details of that press conference.
Yes, and we will endeavour to bring you that news just as quickly as possible, so stay with our coverage here on F1 Digital Plus. Now we're on board with Michael Schumacher, and let's take a look at the whole lap now. This is turn one, the fast right-hander, and now with extra downforce on the car. Look at that, he was very quick on the previous lap, fastest overall. Let's concentrate on the lap layout though, and he goes a bit too deep into the second corner.
Yeah, he just outbraked himself trying hard, obviously, and just too late in the brakes, had to run wide. He missed the apex, and that's just part of the learning process.
Now he heads along this curving section. It is all flat out along here, still a long straight effectively, although it has a long curve in it. This is the new hairpin that we had a great overhead shot of just a moment ago. They accelerate out of this section, and now listen to see if this one's flat out. I think it will be. Yeah, flat out kink right, and then, but it's then hard on the brakes up towards this new grandstand, and they've added about 30,000 new seats to the track this weekend.
In fact, they've added a further 10 from the Michael just struggling just to get power on, but it's a huge change, a whole sea change here in Hockenheim. The problem has been that you couldn't really watch the race satisfactorily once you left the stadium. The stadium has been the traditional place, and if you've ever been here for any DTM, German touring car races, or even way back when Formula 2 raced in Hockenheim without a single chicane, this stadium used to go ballistic. There were fireworks. It was wonderful to see and hear, but of course it meant that you limited the number of potential audiences to the Grand Prix. Now with this extension, this change to the layout, you've got the opportunity to get many, many more people in, and probably more importantly, you're going to see a 67-lap Grand Prix, not a 45-lap Grand Prix. And to back that up, last year's Grand Prix took 1 hour 18 minutes. We are hoping to see a Grand Prix that will last maybe an hour and a half, an hour 35 minutes. So the fans and the viewers are getting much more value for their money.
Well, it's good to see Giancarlo Fisichella back at the wheel of the Jordan F1 car after that very heavy crash. And the Manicure accident putting him out of qualifying and out of the race itself. But as we've heard, he's well rested and back in the car here after being checked out by Professor Sid Watkins. And well, Fisichella, I'm sure, just delighted to be back at the wheel, and he can concentrate on what he's good at. Michael Schumacher on another quick lap. Look at that, really using the road. That's coming back into the stadium section through the Ajip curve, and that looked very, very impressive indeed. Of course, in the old days, John, with the track and its former layout, they used to have to deal with all these tight corners with very little downforce. Now, with the new layout, a lot more downforce on the car.
Yes, and it's going to change both in terms of the cornering speed. There's a yellow flag, I thought, being waved. Just got a glimpse of it. We need to have a look and see if there was something, or whether that was just a race fan in the grandstands. I think it may have been a race fan waving a flag. So Michael Schumacher improves again, 1:17.537. And you're saying that thinking of a qualifying lap at 1:16? I think we're going to be looking about 1:14s.
Yeah, easily.
Balance-wise, already second lap, and then also afterwards I have understeer, mainly because of some graining on the front. But it's also the balance of it. It is very bad in the last corner. I cannot go early on throttle because I get massive understeer. Maybe it's also related to the diff. The last time lap I was on spots. It was not only quicker because of that, just because I learned the circuit better also. And then I get even more understeer, for example, into...
Well, there's a lot of work to be done, and the amount of feedback, we're looking at Coulthard, who ran wide just a moment ago, but no damage done, I think. Amount of feedback from Heidfeld there really indicating how much work has to be done today as the teams learn the new track layout. Now, we've seen the Arrows cars out on track, and they are running here today, which is great news, and Peter Windsor, I think, has managed to catch up with Enrique Bernoldi.
Enrique looked very quick out of the box there. What's the circuit like?
Yeah, the circuit is quite interesting to drive, and we are still learning the track, and it's a little bit too dirty at the moment.
But you were very quick on the times. Does the car feel good? Good balance and grip?
Yeah, the car is feeling good, and we are improving every lap. I think the circuit is getting better every lap, and you learn the circuit also, so I think we still have, everybody has still a lot to improve.
Why are you out of the car at the moment?
Because they're changing something that I need to go out of the car.
Okay, a hard couple of weeks for you. Good to be back in the racing car?
Yeah, it's very good feeling, yeah.
Okay, very best of luck, thank you.
So Enrique Bernoldi, it's great to see both of the Arrows on track here this morning. Olivier Panis has just gone third fastest, so the Bridgestone user's looking to be in good shape, as we would expect on a Friday on a very green track, as we call it, which means there's no rubber laid down on this brand new asphalt surface that's recently been laid.
Well, we go back to Michael Schumacher coming through the stadium and into this turn on to the Sud curve, which leads on to pit straight, and then Nord curve. Nord curve no longer has the gravel trap. We've got some of that high grip there. You can see it. High grip tarmac in the event of a car spinning. Chances are of recovering are better on that tarmac than going into gravel. So Michael Schumacher again improves 1:17.004, and he's already only completed 9 laps, and we're not even halfway through this session. As Ralf Schumacher, I think, making an adjustment around the front suspension. That spin we saw a few moments ago, they may well try to cure that by mechanical means rather than maybe going through simply the aerodynamic route. Scratching over the curbing and maybe occasionally kicking a bit of dust. Now the car, you can see with the level of downforce they're running, much more glued to the racetrack.
Felipe Massa. Now remember what happened to him last time out in Manicourt. It was a big jump start for him, and in the end also he crossed over the white line as well. It was a very eventful weekend once again for the young Brazilian, but he's always dramatic to watch, particularly on these first days, and his team engineers reckons it only takes him 5 laps to learn a track, and then he's right on the base. And currently Felipe Massa 10th fastest and putting in a better lap now. He's going to move up the order slightly.
I don't know whether that says a lot for Felipe Massa or just how easy and good a car the Sauber is. And again, as he came through the Agip curb into the stadium, he dropped a wheel over, and he does improve. He goes up to 5th quickest. So Felipe Massa once again proving that he's very quick out of the box. The question is he going to be quick at the end of the qualifying session on Saturday afternoon? But Olivier Panis doing a great job, personal best, first and second. He could go second quickest, He stays third.
He stays third, just 2/10 slower than Barrichello, and he's completed a full 17 laps, more than anybody else so far in this session. So once again, getting the mileage in. We've seen this from Panis quite a few times throughout the season, getting plenty of mileage on the new track.
And that's interesting from a tyre perspective, because effectively he's on that one set of tyres he started the session on, and his fastest lap has been done on lap 17. Which, if I was from Michelin, I would say, well, that's a pretty clear indication. Now, look, offline, very, very dirty. We heard Nick Heidfeld, I think, complain about the dirt on track. But going back to the tyre situation, to do 17 laps and then, OK, new track, cleaning surface, all that, nevertheless, still interesting that the Bridgestone tyre had certain life in it to provide that level of speed.
Back with the Brazilian Massa. Once again, look at the behaviour of the car. Look how it flicks around from one to the other. Always a lot of work going on the steering wheel, but remember the lack of grip relative today compared to how much grip there'll be tomorrow. But it moves Massa up to 4th place. Very fast, very aggressive flick into that first corner. And coming up behind the car of Enrique Bernoldi. Bernoldi moving out of the way, I think, leaving plenty of space on the inside.
Yeah, Bernoldi had just exited the pit lane, and Felipe Massa not quite sure whether Bernoldi was going to let him go through or not. He hesitated, which is, I think, in these circumstances, the right thing to do, but goes through. And interesting to watch, again, to see the arrows on track. We haven't seen them on track, other than that one rather sad lap they did in qualifying in the French Grand Prix. 18 seconds. Now, depending on which team you listen to, it's either 9 seconds, 7 seconds, or 12 seconds. So close to halving the amount of full throttle on any one given part of track. So shifting the emphasis away, let's say, from the extreme power that maybe BMW and Ferrari have, putting it much, much more onto car drivability, balance and overall grip. And that may well see teams that have not featured quite so strongly previously here in Hockenheim coming up into the picture.
Panis has moved up to second now, so he has split those two Ferraris. Good effort that from the Frenchman. Massa is fourth. Sato, who we were watching there a second ago, goes into sixth now that Panis has improved a bit more. Kimi Räikkönen on track. And talking about the Michelin tyres that are used by McLaren and Williams, of course, McLaren did a great job in France, apparently selecting the perfect of the two compounds. Michelin said that they actually didn't finalise their choice of tyres for this race until during the French Grand Prix, and then once finalised that decision, they had tyres manufactured in the early part of the week and then sent them out here to Hockenheim. So really, all that development work still going on. Yeah,
Räikkönen losing time coming around the hairpin bend, but I think the job that Michelin did, they had by far and away, I believe, the best tyre for Manicourt. We wait to see who will have the advantage here at this revised Hockenheim circuit. Nevertheless, to turn around, it was just to make your decision basically on Sunday and then instruct the Clermont-Ferrand, which is about 100 kilometers away, the manufacturing plant for Michelin tyres, to go down this direction, produce the tyres, then get them all transported from Clermont-Ferrand to arrive here in time to be mounted for all their teams. Is an absolutely stunning effort. I mean, just something that amazes me.
We're watching Kimi Räikkönen here at the moment, but his teammate David Coulthard, we gather, has some sort of problem. The car's up on jacks in the garage, and they're reporting an oil leak. They've got a seal failure, so that's going to hurt Coulthard's attempts to learn this track. Ninth fastest at the moment, but he's only completed some 6 laps.
And remember, Coulthard was quite late in going out. He did that one installation lap, came, sat in the pits for about 20 minutes. They didn't appear to be working at the car at that point. Nevertheless, he's done, in total now, David Coulthard has done 6 laps back in the pits. Interestingly, one of the newcomers to the circuit again, Takuma Sato, never been here like everybody else. He's gone 6th quickest. Raikkonen 5th and Heidfeld is 7th. They're all on personal best and on the lap right now.
Well, we were talking of Coulthard's problems just a moment ago, and Bruce Jones has managed to catch up with McLaren's Dave Ryan.
David Ryan, it looks as though David Coulthard is out for the rest of the session. His car is up on jacks behind you. What's the problem?
We've had a seal fail in the driveline, so we're losing grease, and if we carry on running, we'll damage it. So we're stopped to fix it now, and we'll get out again for the next session.
How was David able to identify that, or was that your engineers by telemetry from the garage?
No, we spotted it when he came in. It was fairly obvious to see when he came in. So,
all right, David, thanks a lot.
So, disappointing start to the weekend for Coulthard. There is the car up on stands down in the McLaren pit garage, and Coulthard, frustrated, won't be able to get in some important running in this first session at the revised Hockenheim circuit. Michael Schumacher fastest from Olivier Panis and Rubens Barrichello, so Ferraris are split by the BAR Honda. Jenson Button might be watching that with interest from down in the Renault garage. Button himself currently 9th fastest, just 1 ahead of Coulthard.
Well, David Coulthard may be unhappy about this, but believe me, McLaren will be equally unhappy, because very often they'll split the team. The two drivers, one will go one direction aerodynamically, one will go a different direction mechanically, and they'll then overlap that information. Now they're down to one car, that responsibility being shouldered by Kimi Raikkonen. Then you'll lose on the exit of the corner.
So now up into this tight left-hander, then a little kink and into the right before heading towards the stadium section. Let's just listen up here. And now we switch our attention to Nick Heidfeld.
Heidfeld about to complete a lap, got personal best, first and second sector, 6th quickest. He now displaces his teammate and goes to 5th.
Very much reminds me of Kopp's corner now, that first corner here with extra downforce on the car. They're so briefly slowing the car down before they turn into it, and in qualifying that's going to be pretty daunting.
It's going to be a massive corner, and you can see there are still those bumps as you come into the corner, into the Nord curve. Car a little bit unstable on entry, it's going to be fidgety. Watching Ralph as he came out of the corner, just kicking up a bit of dust from the left rear of the car. Ralf Schumacher up to 9th place on a 19.249, but of course remember Williams do use this, particularly the first part of Friday running, with a lot of fuel on board, and it is purely about information gathering that they're currently running.
Well, Raikkonen being able to put behind him what happened at Manicourt, his best and his worst result, as he put it afterwards. A fantastic 2nd place, but it was so nearly his first Grand Prix win, and it would have been fully deserved as well. But as it turned out, Michael Schumacher grabbed the headlines, and now Michael Schumacher sitting on his 5th World Championship, but still determined to take only his 2nd win here at Hockenheim. Hasn't completed that many laps. He's done 9 laps so far to be fastest overall, compared to 19 for Olivier Panis. And we're just waiting for the man who is the hero in this part of Germany to come back out on track again. We're about an hour away from Stuttgart. That's the Mercedes-Benz headquarters, so they'll have a lot of guests. We've got a blow-up for the Jaguar of De La Rosa.
And I was just about to say, both Jaguars out on track, but not particularly impressive. But that is a further nail for Jaguar. They've had a rotten time.
Pedro, we see you on the screen.
And Irvine's performance, a very fine performance from Eddie Irvine and Jaguar and Manicourt, just soured by that rear wing failure. The two end plates appeared to just delaminate and peeled the whole wing and the centre section of the wing off. And we heard Peter Windsor in the start of this programme saying that James Courtney had a like failure. So Pedro 18th quickest, Eddie 20th quickest, and maybe is the honeymoon of the French Grand Prix in terms of qualifying for Eddie 9th place for that Grand Prix. Watch as we see what happens. Pedro's just turning and he goes, and there she goes, literally just on the exit of that turn off the back straight, the final straight, and that's a massive blow-up.
Yeah, that was another big one. And De La Rosa, John, he seems to be getting all of the mechanical woes. I know Irvine had the rear wing failure, but De La Rosa in qualifying had both his race car and the spare car go wrong on him in Manicourt. And now here we are, only 40 minutes into the first free practice session, and he's had an engine failure.
Yes, the Cosworth built V10 engine, and that is something that the folk up at Northampton will be very, very unhappy to see, as Pedro steps out of the car and now behind the safety cage, the safety fencing, keeps an eye on it, but you can look at his face and say, well, when's it going to change? As we look into the Jaguar team garages, and the spare car up on the stands, of course, as we mentioned, not allowed to be used until qualifying. Thankfully, there was an oil flag out. Now, we should have seen an oil flag out on the entry into the Adelaide hairpin bend at the French Grand Prix. Had that flag come out, maybe Kimi Raikkonen mightn't have gotten into trouble, and he may have gone on and taken his maiden Grand Prix victory.
It is something that I'm enjoying seeing after so little action for the Arrows team in Manicourt. It's great to see Frentzen attacking and pushing hard on his home track, and there'll be some support for him here, I'm sure. 10th fastest currently, but this lap should make that even better. Further up the top 10 potentially. Let's watch him. Oh, gets a bit sideways into the last corner.
Yeah, he's had a little bit of problem. Noticed a couple of times the back end stepping out. Frentzen was 10th, he goes 9th, and an improvement to 19.2. So the balance of the Arrows, the minute towards the oversteering nature. Now the team may decide to keep the car, not really go and make too many changes. The biggest change that's occur in this session, and certainly in the second session, which will come 1 hour after this one ends, is the track is going to come to the cars and to the tyres. So don't fall into the trap of suddenly saying, oh, change the springs, change the bars, put more camber on, bit more downforce. Your teams today hopefully have got enough sense to say, look, let's see where the track is. If it's drivable at all, stick with what you got.
So Nick Heidfeld, another of the German drivers competing here this weekend, and hoping for another promising performance from the Sauber in their battle for 4th place in the Constructors' Championship with Renault. But of course it was Jenson Button who scored another point in that battle last time out in Manicourt. We're riding with Frentzen now. Let's just listen and watch for a second. This is coming back into the stadium, into the sequence of corners we know well from previous years at Hockenheim. And now we switch from Frentzen to Barrichello. This is just turning off the old straight and coming on to... in fact, no, that's not. That's coming out of the hairpin. So he's out of the hairpin onto this new section. Tight left-hander.
Ben, there'll be no overtaking into that left-hander, believe me, because they're so quick through that right-hander, and the straight's too short to get up closer behind somebody. And with the downforce and the braking capacity of a modern Formula 1 car, it's going to be very tight. But look at that, 0.3 of a second up.
So Barrichello looking to improve. Now the Ferraris haven't been out for a while. The track's improved. That was somebody going slowly.
Yes. Well, I think it may have been an arrow, just trying to look up on screen to see who it was. Or maybe it was Mark Webber, in fact.
And now coming out of the last corner. This looks like a further improvement for Barrichello. Let's see, it is a 16.9, so just 33 thousandths of a second faster than his teammate Michael Schumacher. But Schumacher is on track now and beginning to pick up pace himself. So we'll keep an eye on Barrichello and Schumacher as Felipe Massa once again out there as well. See how much extra road he uses. He's certainly been doing that a few times already in this session. And there, once again, that very aggressive little flick into the corner. See the hands working on the steering wheel. And getting out of his way is Jenson Button.
I mean, the way that Felipe Massa drives, it's probably the nearest I've seen anybody in a Grand Prix car relating to what a kart. I mean, if you get into a kart, whether it be 100cc or whatever, and you just flick it around, well, that's what Felipe Massa does. He just seems to have a sufficient confidence, and also he can handle a car that is a very, nose pointy car. And he doesn't worry about what the back end does. He just sort of lets it gather itself up and follow along.
Well, he started his career in karts, as did so many of these drivers, when he was 9 years old. Comes from Sao Paulo, and here is fellow Brazilian Rubens Barrichello, just locking that left front. That's a fairly common sight. Alan McNish has popped up to 8th, by the way, so that's a good effort. Villeneuve is 9th. But let's just see what this lap is from Barrichello. I don't think it's going to be any further improvement on his previous best, to 16.9. No, well, yes, it is a fraction faster. Still a 16.9. But a 16.9.12, so two good laps there from Barrichello.
Now back to Michael Schumacher. Well, he's 1.8 seconds down and he runs off track. Now, Michael, that is not what you're meant to do. Now, whether he's done that deliberately or whether that was just a little feel, serious, I mean, he wasn't running quickly enough to have done that as an error. I wonder, was he just having a little exploratory look? Watch again and see what Michael Schumacher does.
Yeah, this is actually further.
This is at the hairpin bend.
Yeah, this is at the hairpin. This is what he was doing down there.
He may try to do this to see if there's any advantage in going that wide. That was actually not the corner we've just seen here. Hopefully this is the corner. I think this is the coming out. That was coming out of the Nord curve, going down to the new extension.
So do you think he's doing a bit of experimenting here, John? Is that?
Well, I don't think he was going hard enough or quickly enough. I think it may have been maybe a combination of things, but he certainly found out something. Whether he will ever attempt to do that in a full-blown qualifying run, I would doubt. I think that race director Charlie Whiting might take a rather dim view of anything that would be seen to be taking advantage of the racetrack. So it may be just a little bit of experience and a little of knowledge for Michael and for the Ferrari team.
Well, he's been involved in a couple of incidents down to that first corner at the start of the Grand Prix at Hockenheim in the past, and notably, of course, last year, when on the original start he made a very poor getaway and was hit from behind. On the second start he got away okay, but there have been other incidents, so it's probably good to check out the runoff area down there. You might need it at the start of the Grand Prix.
On board with Nick Heidfeld, but good news for the fans of the Jordan team. Giancarlo Fisichella, he's now gone 7th quickest, so Giancarlo getting back into the rhythm, getting the feel and all those lovely sensations a Formula 1 car provides you. And teammate Sato was in the top 10, he's now dropped down to 11th, and the young Japanese again just acquitting himself on a brand new circuit, and he will feel maybe on a more level playing field than previously this year.
Let's just ride for a second there. Well, let's turn our attention indeed to Fisichella. And Fisichella, as you say, 7th fastest. So just looking at the top 10, we've got Barrichello, Michael Schumacher, Panis, Heidfeld, then Massa. Raikkonen is now 6th. This man is 7th. Then it's Montoya 8th, McNish 9th, and Jacques Villeneuve currently 10th in the second BAR Honda.
And we may see another improvement from Fisichella. He was fast, a personal fastest. He is currently 7th. He comes across the line. It's an improvement in time, but remains 7th quickest. But watching Fisichella as he came into that tight left-hander, the Sachs curve, you could really see the speed he was carrying, which is something, again, going back 1 year, couldn't do. But Michael on another stunning lap.
Yeah, he's showing fastest mid-sector here, Michael Schumacher. This should take it again. Look at that, 16.3, nearly 6/10 of a second faster than his teammate.
And wasn't he wicked the way he came through the Nord curve? Schumacher really, really on a pace.
Yeah, so attacking as ever, as we've come to expect. Jenson Button now making his way around as he gets used to this track. Currently down in 12th place and stays 12th on that 120.470. And let's just take a little look back. This was Jenson Button a moment ago, and did he make a little mistake there? Just running wide over the curb. Managed to gather it back together well.
Yeah, a bit of a tank slapper. Michael Schumacher has spun, and that's down at the hairpin bend, having just completed. Oh, and there's somebody in big trouble. It's one of the Jordans.
Yes, it is one of the Jordans. It's Fisichella, and he's been off coming back into the stadium through the Ajit curve, and it looks as though
she's been over the curb by the look of it. Maybe he's lost the barge board.
Barge board's on the left-hand side.
Coming in anyway.
So Michael Schumacher,
get ready because he's going to lay rubber.
Up to that spin at the hairpin bend had gone even quicker. So Michael Schumacher on his 15th lap, really just illustrating. Here we see, comes up into the hairpin bend on the brakes, turns in on the brakes probably, and that's where the back end just suddenly begins to go away, and around she goes. Michael deciding, well, let's get it over and done with as quickly as possible. Here's Fisichella, watch him run wide a la Felipe Massa. Oh, and this time goes well and truly wide, and then the barge board flips up and flies away. There she goes.
Very good. Well, it might remind you of Manicourt a little bit, doesn't it, where he ran out of road at the Estoril corner and the wing came off. This time, just a barge board, no major dramas, and he's back onto the circuit.
Do you think he had a bit of flashback there when that happened?
He may well have done, yes. And it would not be a good idea to go and hit the wall as hard as he did last week. That really was a very, very heavy impact. They reckoned that he damaged the front wing on the chicane curbs on the lap previously. So, of course, now perhaps a little more aware that if any potential damage is done, he must have the car checked over. So, Fisichella back in the pits. We've just got 10 minutes, just 10.5 minutes to go in this first free practice session. Michael Schumacher and Rubens Barrichello, first and second for Ferrari. Then it's Panis, third fastest. That's the surprise, I suppose, of this session so far, that Olivier Panis, the Frenchman, in the BAR Honda, the cars that went well at Silverstone and of course had points in the race itself, but didn't really feature at Manicourt all weekend. The BAR Hondas now looking stronger. This was Bernoldi a moment ago doing almost exactly the same as Fisichella.
I mean, I promise you, and I hate to say it, but somebody's a bit of bodywork came off the arrows as well. Somebody's going to get out of shape big time coming into the Agip curve, and they're just going to turn sharp right, and there's a wall there. I'm not sure there's any tyre protection in front of the wall, but somebody's going to go off there big time. It's going to be a heavy impact.
Now we're back on board with Raikkonen, and it is tight, that left-hander. This one a bit quicker, hard to pick it up on the throttle. Now this is the corner they've all been running wide at. The next one he's coming to.
Yes, this is the Agip curve, much quicker than we saw. Again, the track is effectively, well, it is narrower. You're coming from a wide track into a much narrower part of racetrack through the Sachs curve. Absolutely Harry flatters all the way through this section of track down to these final two curves, the Sud curve, which leads on to start-finish straight.
Yeah, there's another demonstration there of what you said earlier. He'd grabbed the front brake, but it still kept on a tight line into the hairpin. Fourth fastest for Kimi Raikkonen on a 1:18.013, so that's a good improvement. He's still 0.4 of a second slower than Olivier Panis.
But more critically, he's 1.7 seconds slower than the Ferrari, and that really translates into tyre, rubber, grip. So Bridgestone appear on the track right now to have a huge advantage, in particular with Ferrari, but also a substantial advantage, 0.4 of a second to Olivier Panis in the BAR.
So just a quick reminder, if you've joined us during this session, David Coulthard has not completed many laps. They've had an oil seal failure. De La Rosa also had an engine go in a big way. There we are. In fact, there's David having to sit out this session as they prepare the car for the second 1 hour of free practice. So frustrating time for the Scotsman when it's an opportunity to learn the track and gather an awful lot of information that's required as they go through this weekend. So Raikkonen has the task now of trying to assess track conditions, learn what they can as they look forward to another competitive outing. But Heidfeld has just beaten Raikkonen's time, so we've seen an improvement from Nick Heidfeld. He's gone to fourth, Raikkonen's back down to fifth.
And Kimi Raikkonen still pounds away in the stadium. And the car not as comfortable. Well, there you see what happened. He just too hard coming into the Sud curve, ran over the curbs. Now that lap will be compromised. He'll be disappointed in that because his first and second sectors were an improvement. His best time was an 18.0. That was an 18.27. So maybe he might have made, well, he certainly could have got into the 7 teams. He could have maybe reclaimed fourth quickest time.
Wow, a bit of seesawing going on the steering wheel there, but he got it back together. This was Olivier Panis a moment ago.
Well, being French, he talks with his hands as well as with his mouth, and that's a radio conversation back to the pits. But Olivier Panis, in fact, in that first sector, had done a personal best at 1:17.1. And we look further down the field, improvements for Saulo. De La Rosa, of course, we saw some moments ago, had stopped with that huge blow-up.
Looks like they're adding downforce onto the Ferrari. They're putting an extra element, as you look at that rear wing, an extra element onto the rear wing. That's to increase the amount of downforce created. And there, if you look at the Toyota, you can see that that's got an extra flap as well. Sorry, the BAR Honda, let's say Toyota, but the BAR there of Olivier Panis also has an extra flap on it to create as much downforce as possible.
Well, Panis he's 0.7 of a second away from Barrichello. He's going to shave some of that 0.7 off. He get into a middle 17, maybe a low 17. He goes slow. He loses time now, whether that was caused by traffic or whatever. But certainly in the first 2 sectors was up. Back to I always get it wrong, Takuma Sato.
Takuma Sato, the Japanese driver. And let's just see what he can manage on this lap. He currently is down in 10th, but he's improved on his first sector. Middle sector, no improvement. And now we're watching him through the Opal curve and then heading up towards the last corner onto the start-finish straight once again. And this is where he tries not to run too wide. That looked pretty neat and tidy, but does it move him up? Well, 10th fastest. It is an improvement in time for the Japanese driver. And it's interesting if you look at the times. Again, it is Bridgestone tyre cars that are dominating proceedings at the moment. Fastest of the Michelin runners is Kimi Räikkönen in 5th, but the next fastest is Montoya down in 9th.
So a replay of Takuma Sato through that tight left-hand hairpin bend. Lots of rubber being laid. And of course, that's what the circuit needs. It needs lots of Bridgestone and lots of Michelin rubber, and then further times will come. But can you imagine the thought down the pit lane when they see, as we have seen here on screen, with Ferrari adding downforce to Michael Schumacher's Ferrari, already doing a 16.3 compared to the best of the rest, which is Panis on a 17.6, 1.3 seconds. And that's on the Bridgestone tyre. Where would you be like if you're on Michelin? Well, that's Kimi Räikkönen on an 18.0, 1.7 seconds away. That must send shock horror thoughts through the Michelin teams.
Yeah, Montoya's just matched virtually Räikkönen's time there, John, on the same tyres. Both have done a 1:18.0, just separated by a couple of hundredths of a second. So Montoya now up into the top 6 as his teammate here, Ralf Schumacher, awaits his opportunity to come back out. Under 5 minutes to go in this first session of free practice, then the 1 hour gap, and then an out again for another 60 minutes to see what else they can learn from this session. Remember, both arrows are running. We've got Heinz-Harald Frentzen 15th fastest currently. Enrique Bernoldi is 17th fastest. The two Minardis, as expected really, are the two slowest cars. 21st, 22nd for Mark Webber and Alex Young, although Young's time not far off Webber's, so learning the track well. The two Toyotas going better than they did in France.
Yes, Alan McNish is 11th and Mikasello 12th on a 10th of a second, separating the two drivers. So benefiting from coming to a circuit which is new to everybody. And of course Michelin tyres on the Toyota. Interesting, that interview with Uwe Anderson. I just got a feeling that Uwe Anderson felt, well, it was a management team, a decision beyond him. And I just wonder whether he would have preferred to be on the Bridgestone tyre. And in fact, after this session, there will be an extended version of that interview with the Toyota team leader, the team principal, Uwe Anderson. So good watching.
Yes, indeed. We're riding with Rubens Barrichello now. Let's see what his split times are like. First one was nothing too spectacular, so I would doubt it, but the middle one's a good one. He's about 3/10 down on the first sector, but up on the second, so still a good lap coming up for the Brazilian.
Further down the field in 4th place, Nick Heidfeld doing a better job. He could improve up to 3rd, but Michael Schumacher, with that additional downforce in his car, has gone fastest of all in that first sector as Barrichello comes up to complete another lap.
So he stays 2nd fastest, just under 2/10 slower than Barrichello. Faster lap time for him, though, than his previous best, and that puts him over a second faster than Olivier Panis in 3rd, let alone what Michael's doing.
Nick Heidfeld also looking to see an improvement, personal fastest that is, in 1st and 2nd sector is Jacques Villeneuve, and he's putting a little stone just to stop the BAR rolling away. But really, Michael Schumacher's 2nd sector time slightly down on his previous best. Jacques Villeneuve has stopped. That's a turn 2, the corner that leads onto this new extension.
Yes, so it looks like a mechanical failure for that car as we ride back with Michael Schumacher. This is a quick lap. Remember, he's put on a bit more downforce. The middle sector not quite so quick, but it could still be an improvement. It's going to be close to his previous best. He's slower by just 0.08 of a second.
I think he was positioning himself to try and go for a lap now. Again, traffic all over the place. Kimi Räikkönen just ahead of him. Yellow flags. This is where we saw Villeneuve's car. The stones, where's the car? Well, there it is there, just off to the left, and Jacques walking away from it. Unfortunately, that's not a very handy place, but with only just 2 minutes of the session remaining, the marshal rather courageously, I feel, walks to that car in spite of the yellow lights and the yellow flags being waved at this sector of track, and that effectively is going to bring to an end anybody's chances of improving, because, well, let's have a look and see what happens. Jacques Villeneuve just gets wide on the marbles, pulls it back. Well, already he's in trouble, and he just pulls off the track and stops the car on that bit of gravel, or a bit of tarmac now, in fact. His teammate Olivier Panis continues doing a good job and improving in 1st sector.
Yes, he's completed some 29 laps in this session. He's been a busy boy indeed, as Olivier Panis scored his 1st ever World Championship points here at Hockenheim way back in 1994 on the podium with a 2nd place finish driving for Ligier. And there we go, across the line, 17.482, an improvement in time.
But Ben, he might be in trouble because he's actually not only improved on time, he improved in that first sector as well, which under a yellow flag is a big no-no. So Olivier Panis might find himself being relieved of a little bit of cash as a consequence to doing that. Nevertheless, the team would say, go ahead and do it. We can gain something from it, we'll pay the money in the first place.
So how much do you think Olivier Panis' pace today is down to the fact that he might not have a drive next year, now that Button's been announced at BAR Honda?
Well, no one has said that Olivier hasn't got a drive. They're not just saying he has a drive. So I think there's a lot to play for right now in BAR, and the situation regarding Jacques Villeneuve with the team encouraging him to sign a much longer contract, which no doubt would be, let's say, more evenly negotiated than the contract that Villeneuve currently holds for one more year with the BAR team.
Absolutely, and well, Panis certainly not the sort of driver to suddenly put in an outstanding effort just for the sake of a contract. He is one of the most consistent performers in Formula One, and we're just going to have to see whether he gets his seat sorted out for next year. Across the speed trap figures, Michael Schumacher with the fastest speed trap figure at the moment, 322.1 kilometers per hour. And next up it's Barrichello, no surprise, but interestingly the two Saubers are next up on that speed trap, 319 and 318. So Ferrari engines in the top 4 spots on the speed trap.
Yeah, so we were thinking about a top speed being slightly under the 200 miles an hour. Already we've got Michael Schumacher above it and Rubens Barrichello on it, and then it's the two Saubers kissing what was the estimated top speed.
Yeah, it's good news that Hockenheim still sees speeds over 200 miles an hour, because of course it was famous for speeds of up to 220 miles per hour in its previous format. And that long curving straight, the Parabolica as it's called, actually as long as the straight at Barcelona, so it is a very long section. It's just that it's got a curve in it, but speeds are still very high. Raikkonen there stays forward. Across the line, improvement for Barrichello. So Barrichello goes fastest right at the end of the session.
And just to contrast that, Michael Schumacher in that first sector has actually gone fastest of all, but because he's taken the checkered flag, he will not be able to complete the lap, but he will be able to do a fastest second sector and can push all the way back to the point where you come to the Sud curve. At that time, you've got to dive into the pits.
Bernoldi going very slowly. You just saw him being passed there by the Renault, but I think he's actually okay. Still making his way round, I think, but very slowly back towards pit lane. Everybody taking the checkered flag now, and this first 1 hour coming to a conclusion. And we've certainly seen a lot of track activity, John, as we would expect. A new track to learn, lots of setup work to be done, and everybody putting in as many laps as possible. Montoya making a little mistake as he got to grips with the track as well.
Yes, we've seen both the Williams BMWs spin, and both cars appear to be the result of a loose back end. And, well, Jarno Trulli gets it wrong as well. But fortunately, with this revised circuit, a lot of areas for drivers, if they do make a mistake, enabling them to get back onto track. And probably for me, the most important thing of all is they're not dragging tons of gravel back on the track with them.
Well, Bernoldi didn't make it back. So I said he was going slowly, and he stopped just up towards the Sachs curve, the infield hairpin. And disappointment, but at least they managed to get most of the session in, and it's great to report that Arrows Frentzen, 10th fastest. He completed some 20 laps in that session, and Bernoldi, 16th fastest. He also completed 20 laps. So big improvement on what we saw in France.
Contrasting the look inside the Williams team with Ralf Schumacher and Juan Pablo Montoya. Montoya's 6th quickest, Ralf Schumacher way down in 18s now. We know that they always tend to run a lot of fuel on board, and they go through this routine of doing their work for the weekend, whereas other teams, I think, have taken the opportunity, particularly with the thought that maybe weather was going to be changeable, to run lower levels of fuel and go out and find out as quickly as possible what the speed, what the potential of this Hockenheim circuit is going to be. From what we've seen of it, I have to say, I think it's going to provide a pretty exciting Grand Prix, certainly with the, I think maybe coming into the stadium in particular, that's going to be a critical corner, but also the corner exiting the Nord curve going out of the stadium. That is just going to be in qualifying. I mean, that's going to just be mind-blowing.
Looks like there's a couple of places where there's potential to make a mistake in the race when the concentration goes just a little bit. You only need to put a wheel slightly over the edge here and you can be in trouble. So we'll have to see what happens once we get into the Grand Prix. Barrichello doing lots of hand explanations as to the handling of his car. but he must be pretty happy about his fastest time in this session. Less happy, I'm afraid, David Coulthard, who only managed to complete 6 laps. Matt has the chance to speak to him right now.
Thanks, Ben. Yes, David, that was a brief excursion on this new circuit. David, what was the problem?
We had a drive shaft problem, which meant obviously they had to change that. So not as many laps as I would have liked to have run this morning. We'll play a bit of catch up this afternoon. Just
6 laps so far. So what were your first impressions, and they can only have been first impressions of this revised circuit?
Yeah, well, I was a fan of the old circuit, so I was always going to be, you know, potentially a little bit negative for the new one. But in actual fact, in the few laps I've done, it's got an interesting flow to it. The only problem being you'll notice a few corners like turn 1 and also 2 corners from the end where people are sort of running off the circuit, and it's because a lot of the entries are very fast, and then suddenly they've sort of, you know, drawn a straight line on the exit, so they're not sort of natural flowing corners that you can really, you know, work the car right out to the white line. You know, you're either on the tarmac or you're over the curb, so that's a bit of a shame. And once again, I don't know what it is about Germany, but the tarmac they lay is perfectly smooth on the straights and then very bumpy in the braking areas. So they need to do it the other way around.
Now, in a couple of minutes, your boss is going to be making an announcement about the McLaren driver lineup for next season. Care to give us a little bit of inside information?
Well, it would be unprofessional of me to say anything before the announcement, but I think we'll be talking to each other in the future.
I was just going to say that. I hope so. David, thanks very much for your time.
Thanks.
OK, that's David Coulthard, smiling despite his problems. Let's look back on how the others fared in the first session ahead of the Grand Prix.